Welcome back to India, Shumona.
Thank you.
Were we separated at birth?
Yeah, it seems like.
Yeah. We just matched our bracelets and found that
Yes.
we were indeed separated at the Kumbh
In
Mela.
thoughts, of course.
Yeah. Well, welcome to India. When was the last time you came to the country?
2018 in
Okay.
end February, March for the Calcutta Book Fest. And then, I was busy writing my the next novel of that time, 2019. Then it was 2020, you know what happened 2020, and for 2 years I couldn't move, and there was other books coming out. So I'm very happy to be here.
That's great. Before we get to Down with the Poor, I would like to actually take you back to, because we don't often get to meet you here in India. So if you can begin at the beginning, as it were, for us, tell us where you grew up, what attracted you to the French language, what made you move, because it's very unusual for a writer from India to actually be writing all her work in French.
Well, I was born and brought up in Calcutta, almost as place like this, like book fair, So the first place was my parents' house. There were books. Both of them were not rich, not poor, but they were very much interested into buying books, reading books, all sort of literature, Indian literature. We should say maybe Indian literature. There's so many languages there, not only Hindi, not only English, so many vernacular languages. And then my mom was a high school maths teacher. My father was an economist, Marxist, an atheist, and there is all sort of looks like and kind of logo, but they have their meanings, right? Well, so I grew up with books, and there were Russian literature, American, French, German, Spanish literature. My maternal aunt also is a translator, like you. She used to translate, and she keeps on translating from Sanskrit to Bengali, Bengali to Sanskrit, and German to Sanskrit, Sanskrit to German. She used to teach German in Max Muller Bhavon and spent 10-15 years in Germany, working in the Deutsche Welle, Radio Deutsche Welle. So you have understood that in the house there are books, and I was very much into books since my childhood. And later on, when I dramatically miserably finished my BSc in economics, dishonored economics from Calcutta University, and I wanted to do something with my life, and since my childhood I used to write poems in Bengali, published a little bit, very much into foreign languages, started learning Russian. But then at 22, finally, when I grew up, because in India, girls, we don't grow up. It takes so many years to finally grow up. So in 22, when I finally get a chance to say things, decide for myself, I started learning French, and it went really well. It was love at first sight. And I carried on studying French masters, then moved to France, invited by the French embassy through a program for students. And when I was in Paris, I started to writing a travelogue in Bengali, and I understood that it's not working at all, because unconsciously I was j'ai fait un franchisme, c'est-à-dire en français, in French you say inconsciemment, but in English maybe you say subconsciously. No? So I was translating from French to Bengali. I was thinking in French, and I was trying to translate myself from French to Bengali. In my dreams, people from India, people from Calcutta, my mother, father used to come in my dreams. They used to speak French. So I thought it's kind of schizophrenia, interesting kind of schizophrenia. So let's take the good part of it. So I started learning started writing in French. At that point of time, I finished my double MA and MPhil from the Sorbonne University in French literature, translating French writers into Bengali, Bengali writers into French. But of course, the first book I wrote and published in 2008, and the books I write, I hope so, my French has evolved. I'm 50 years old. I've just turned 50 this last summer. But somehow in French language, I'm just 25 years old, because it's just been almost 25 years I'm in France. And if you add few years, okay, 30, okay, chalo, 30 years old. I'm 30 years old according to the French language. Yeah, that's the kind of nutshell kind of story.
Okay, I'd like to ask you later about how you think who you are informs your French, because
Okay.
not the same as a French person's,
Yeah,
the way they
sure,
use the language.
absolutely.
And I don't mean in terms of grammar and syntax,
Absolutely.
but the way you think. But first, tell us about a little bit about your books in chronological order.
Okay.
I'm sorry to have to make you do the blurbing, but
Yes, sir. You are the professor here. I'll do my dissertation oral exam as good as I can, as well as I can.
outsource everything to the students always.
There are students. This is just very good thing. It's a fantastic book fest where so many youngs are there, young guys are there, and girls are there. No, well, I wrote my first travelogue turned into novel fiction about nothing spectacularly original. Indian Bengali girl comes to Paris, fall in love of the city, with the city, and lots of names dropping. You know, I'm criticizing myself. Lots of names dropping. Everything I loved and liked, adored in Paris. The first Café Viennois with crème chantilly, and films, books. Of course, guys. Of course, love. Whatever you can imagine. So that was the first novel. But somehow, in those days, like in 2003, 2004, 5, when I was writing that text, let's say it's a text, and I couldn't construct long sentences in French. I couldn't make, subjonctif. Il y a une Française, ma chère collaboratrice, from the book office, French book office is here. So I couldn't make long sentences in French. So all the sentences were like words like pouring down like raindrops. Words are pouring down from somewhere like raindrops. And okay, the publisher thought that it's very interesting. It's kind of poetical approach, though it wasn't meant to be. It was unwanted poetical approach. They thought which was a kind of fault, a lack of maîtrise en langue from my part, was seen as kind of poetical approach. Well, it was published. It got little bit of attention, not much. But then there was the second novel, yes, for which I'm here. So
yes. So this was the second novel, and maybe since it's come up chronologically, we can plunge straight into it.
Okay.
You said that the first novel was considered poetic. I think so is this. It definitely has elements of poetic, not elements, I think the entire writing is informed with a kind of poetic sensibility. And will you tell us a little bit about whether this is a spontaneous way of writing or whether it is actually very structured?
Well, I used to write poems, but I know that I'm not a poet, that's for sure. I need stories. I need to fill up the blank pages, white pages, to feel myself in a secured place. My secured place is not my home, not a country, not France, not India. My secured place are my books, the pages, first pages. So when I write poems, I used to feel very naked. I used to feel very vulnerable. And I'm a very kind of a storyteller kind of person. I love people, their stories that I know, that I don't know people. I want to make up stories. I imagine things about their lives. So yes, for all these reasons, I always wanted to write novels. That's for sure. But at the same time, whether I'm coming from the poetry. I used to translate, and I tried my hand into poetry. So maybe there's something. It's still there. And I cannot write. Few years back on a television channel, they asked me, so why you write novels? Why you are calling them fictions? Why are not there like essays? So I told them, I'll tell the same thing to you today and to you, that I can't write a normal sentence. Everything is like distorted through the prism of the poetry for me. So when I see something, when I conceive something, and when I write something, I cannot just write a blue sky. I cannot just bluntly say good person or bad person, tall, dark, nothing. I cannot say anything. I'll say maybe he is dark at the clouds that's coming, covering the sky. becoming a long sentence, I'll try to make a metaphor in French, you know. So it's all the time, it's kind of a metaphorical, poetical approach in my writing, yes.
I'm also struck by the fact that your poetic writing about Paris shows it up as anything but beautiful and alluring.
Yes, that's true.
It's very dark and threatening and ominous.
A little bit dark, not very dark. Little bit dark. Okay, come on, chalo.
Okay, but certainly threatening and ominous. And especially the cityscapes that you describe are not very inviting. Or through your eyes, they're not inviting.
Okay, okay, I can take that. So this is a very particular novel where I describe the desperate situation of Bengalis from Bangladesh and also Bengalis from West Bengal who are obliged to present themselves as Bangladeshi to get political asylum in France, because in those days, after finishing my studies at Sorbonne, doing some teaching work, I started working as a translator-interpreter for the political asylum seekers. And it's a huge office. There are thousands and thousands of people coming, and there are hundreds of translators, interpreters working every day, Monday to Friday, you know. And when I met those Bangladeshi people, I was overwhelmed, because when I came to France, in Paris, for me, as I said, in my first novel, it was names dropping. Everything was beautiful. Everything was poetry. Everything was Louvre Museum and Sorbonne and cafe, etc. For the first time, I saw how desperate people can be and how desperate their hopes and dreams are. And the political asylum system itself in France was so paradoxal and hypocritical, because if these people, if they say that they're just poor people, and half of the Bangladesh, down in the southern part of the Bangladesh, stays underwater the most of the year, and they're just trying to get a better place, better life, just trying to reach, like, you know, since ages, since centuries, men, women always moved, try to find a better place, drier place, safer place to live. But if they say the truth, their story, they will be rejected. Their stories will be rejected. So the system is forcing them to lie. The system is forcing them to buy stories written by public writers. And there's a whole, I should say, black market of storytelling, unfortunately, is created now in France and so many other European countries. So I was overwhelmed, and I really had to write about this. And that's why you're right. This novel is very dark. But yeah, I'd say the title of the story is, it's inspired from Baudelaire, a long poem of Baudelaire, Assommons les pauvres, down with the poor. So may I dare say it's like Baudelaire's poem, like it's dark, but it's luminous dark. It's obscure, but it's luminous at the same time. Comment dire, noir luisant, l'obscur luisant, quelque chose d'obscur mais luisant, but darkness which is luminous at the same time. I don't know. You are the translator. You can translate me now.
No, it's best to hear it from you. Yeah, so you've said elsewhere in a recent interview, which will be published soon, that being politically correct is not something that you would want to do as a writer, especially as a writer of fiction. On the face of it, a title like Down with the Poor, and if you will tell us a little bit more about where it occurs in Baudelaire's poetry, on the face of it, it appears to be quite the contrary of what the book is. So it could be an ironic title, but what did you have in mind?
It's a very ironic title. You are very right, Arunava. It's a very ironic title. And the poems, if you very quickly, if I can quote, tell you about Baudelaire's poem. Well, the poet Baudelaire, he goes to a tavern, a bar. He's a bar hopper. He was a bar hopper. And he was in a tavern, and he was drunk and getting out of the bar. And there was a beggar who was begging and asked for money. He was in a terrible situation, almost lying on the street, and miserable condition, humiliating condition. So Baudelaire, as he writes, we don't know what exactly happened, as he writes that he refused to give money to the beggar, and the beggar insisted. The poet refuses, and it goes on for a few minutes, and then it it becomes quite aggressive. The tone becomes aggressive. There's kind of altercation. And finally, poet Baudelaire, it seems that he hit the guy, beggar, and struck hard, and no reaction the first time. And the second time, the beggar then stands up, and he hits back our poet, and then he says that now you have deserved my money. So he shares his pocket money. So this kind of thing that, when you put yourself in a humiliating position, you can't imagine people will respect you. Somehow, maybe in my novel, I wanted to, shake things up a little bit and say that, okay, let's stop begging. And it's a post-colonial situation. We know what happened since the partition of India in Punjab, in Bengal, Bangladesh. We know how the whole Bangladesh, their small country, their misery, their poverty, how the whole thing is so calculated, since the independence. But let's not come here in white people's country with your white desire, and let's just try to stand up and ask for what we deserve. It's this kind of self-dignity kind of thing.
This, of course, is where your novel begins, because the narrator has been arrested.
Yes.
And this is not a spoiler, I think, right?
It's not a spoiler.
Because it begins there. The narrator has been assaulted, the interpreter has been assaulted for hitting a brown man with a bottle of wine in a metro. On the metro, and she's being interrogated. And in the course of her interrogation, she talks about everything that has happened. And she recounts, not all of it is told to Monsieur K. And K, right?
Yes.
K.
Yes.
And K, of course, reminded me of
Kafka.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was intended.
That was, frankly, very honestly, that was so not intentional.
Oh. Okay.
I was looking for a name with a cricky sound, it was crickety sound, and I wrote K, and later on, they said, it's subconsciously you were thinking of Kafka, and they compared the novel of Beckett's work or Kafka's work, and that's so. We don't have a virgin mind. We write because we have read and we keep on reading. So we don't have a virgin mind. It's like superposition, so calcage. It's like your words and thoughts and impression is like getting stage by stage, on your spirit, on your mind. So.
Yeah. So what I really liked was that your book didn't take a sort of normative activist position, saying here are the refugees, let them into the country, the system sucks if it won't take them in, and so on. It's a very nuanced position, to the point where you end up actually assaulting one of...
First thing to be cleared, I didn't assault anybody.
No, not you, the
really.
narrator.
I could have. I have my temper.
Baudelaire did, but not you.
And it's a very fictional kind of
I think it's a bit of fun to tease the reader.
Yeah, it's a teaser. It's a teaser. Actually, that's the teaser.
Thinking it's autobiographical.
Yeah, that's exactly, that's a teaser. You're very right. But it's very subversive, they say. Politically incorrect. But frankly, I was in a situation, in a position in my writing career. It wasn't a career at all. And it was my second novel, not at all a career. And I didn't want to be politically incorrect intentionally. I didn't want it to be provocative intentionally. I didn't want it to provoke anybody. But it just happened to me, maybe this is my character, this is my temperament, that I cannot just see things straight away and just divide the world and the literary world into just some binary, dogmatic concept, like good and bad, evil and odd. For me, our identities are so composite. There is no one-dimensional identity possible. I'm born in a Hindu family, but I'm also very keen to my Muslim friends, to Christian friends, my Jewish atheist. I'm an atheist person. I'm a Marxist myself. And I think if I'm Bengali, I'm also Indian. I'm also Parisian. I'm also French, European, from Mother Earth, and we are all this. We are all everywhere here. We travel or not travel. We live here or live in different country. We are all, everybody is singular person. we are of composite identities, and identities are, it's a flowing situation. It's changing all the time. You cannot define yourself with a one-dimensional, one religion, one nation kind of dogmatic, hegemonic discourse. You cannot do that. If we do that, we are not Indian, because India was never like that. India was always composite. India was always multidimensional, multicultural, multi-religious country. So I come from that. I consider in that way I'm the true Indian. This is the kind of thing should consider to be as true Indian, not the other way around. So yeah, when I write also, I diverted from your question deliberately. Come on. So, and yeah, so politically incorrect, I'm not interested at all. I'm not provocative person, but yes, I have my convictions, and I find my way to put it in my books.
There's a bit where your interpreter is laughing at the stories that she's hearing. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in those days, I used to laugh a lot because their stories are so absurd, you know.
But they're stories of misery, nevertheless. So it seems odd that she's laughing.
There are stories of misery which were very tear-jerkers, but I didn't want a novel to be tear-jerker, you know. But there are situations which were really, really very odd, and also to be mentioned because there are so many levels in this novel, because between men and women, between white men and black women, between black men, brown men, and white women. Because when I was there were people from Bangladesh or West Bengal. Let's say they are brown like me. I am the brown-colored skin. I don't say brown. I say in Bengal you have the soil, you know, polymati. You have the soil. I say my skin color is the color of the soil. Anyways, I use that metaphor in my novel. Anyways, there are so many tensions, post-colonial and gender-biased tensions are there. So there are situations can be at the same time very revolting and funny at the same time. If you read the book, maybe you will laugh too. I mean, I know that you have read the book, but if other people read the book, they can. I think they will laugh a little bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, even the reaction of the French authority, the woman who is sitting there, especially about one story where this guy says that I was accused of someone's murder, although someone else did the job, and then they strung up the body from a guava tree in front of my house, and the French administrator very innocently asked, why didn't the real murderer have a guava tree in front of their house? Why did they choose?
Yes, sir. There are lots of situations like that. I mean, once, like I'll give you one, maybe share another anecdote, the story. Like somebody is pretending to be Christian. He's not Christian. But because in Bangladesh, if you're Christian, you are persecuted. So he's saying he's Christian, he's not. So the officer is asking, so let us know what kind of Christian festivities you attend to. He can't say because he doesn't know. So then we try to help him. I mean, the lady tried to help him. Officer lady tried to help him. She will say, okay, there is one festival in winter, and what happened then? Can't say. And they said, no, Jesus was born in those days. And the guy very innocently will say, see, I was very much in trouble. I was persecuted by the terrorists. I didn't see who came to see Jesus Christ. So yeah, there are lots of little things like that. Yeah.
But there's also this whole fiction, as you said, where even the authorities want to hear a political story.
Exactly.
Then asylum, and they don't care whether it's the truth or not.
They don't. They are just filling up their quota. This is administration. They have their procedures, and they are just trying to fill up the quota. Say, okay, fine, we have done 1,020 dossier of Bangladeshi dossier this month. That's it, and that's the whole thing, and they'll reject it very bluntly. So right, that's the story.
I mean, the absurdity is really very
very very absurd,
and that really comes out. You must read the book. You really must.
Yeah, you should.
Okay, let's move on to what you've been writing since then.
Okay, the book is so dark and so not so funny kind of dark, and so I felt not guilty conscious, but I feel I felt that I should write something which will give a different image of India. Because when you talk about India, there are books about India written by Indian authors, and there are books written about India written by French authors who travel, visit. But somehow I felt what I knew as a child, adolescent, young person in Calcutta, visiting. I came to Jaipur almost 30 years back. We visited whole Rajasthan. We visited Lav Chittor, Jaisalmer, and all. So, frankly, somehow in France, most of the time, readers have very cliches. They have their cliches. India is poor. It's only temples. Calcutta, there are dead bodies everywhere. Calcutta is Mother Teresa. So they don't know actually about the cultural heritage of India, cultural heritage of West Bengal. So I wrote a novel whose name is very bluntly Calcutta. It's a 30-40 years of West Bengal's political and cultural history through a very fictional approach in that novel. So there's a young woman, but finally her father, her mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-aunt, fictional. Through those characters, this whole 40 years of story of Bengal is shown. I have talked about Singh, I have talked about Babri Masjid, I have talked about what happened in 1992, destruction of the Babri Mosque, and 1970s emergency period, and 80s, 90s political situation. So maybe you have guessed by now that all my novels are very political, but I don't want them to be a political agenda, political pamphlet. I'm totally disgusted about those kind of binary kind of novels if they try to do something like that. So I try to make it complex. When you can't decide, when you can't take side, don't take side of anybody actually. I can't take side, I don't take side, and I don't try to make heroes or heroines. I try to grasp the complexity of the human nature and where they are failing, where there are dark sides, where there are zone obscure or zone d'ombre. I'm trying to translate myself, like shadows, where there are shadow zones and all. And if there are one beam of light there, that's interesting. The conjuncture point between the darkness and the light. That's maybe the most interesting thing.
So far, the three books you've talked about all seem not to be rooted in a particular place. They're very much about people in one place, but coming from somewhere else.
Calcutta is about people from Calcutta.
Yeah, but by now you're a French writer.
That's a very interesting question. Okay, how to answer that? I think, Arunava, it's a privilege and it's a risk at the same time, because all these novels I wrote. Next one, Le Testament Rouge, published by Gallimard, and the next one by it's not a novel, it's a non-fiction about me, how I write, why I write in French, how I write French. Yes, I would say that I'm not a mixed-blooded person by birth, but I'm a mixed-blooded person by culture. So I'm a product of my travels. I'm like a suitcase, old suitcase, with stamps, and something is torn, and it's at the airport or imagine old ships, and you have the cargo ships and you have the luggage. So I consider myself like a suitcase, or I have a suitcase in my head. So my novels are all very mixed-blooded in that sense. So I think if I was in India, if I stayed in India, of course I would be writing in French, that's for sure. But the fact that I write in French, I always have to be very on my toes, because I cannot be in French. There is called intranquillité, because I'm not ever in peace with my French. I'm always thriving. I'm always like an adventurer. I'm always going to look something which is not there, like unsatisfied forever. So it's a very interesting situation, and linguistically, and as for literary and culturally. If I stayed in India, I wouldn't have this vision, when I go out, when I'm not, and I'm seeing for so far away from France, from Paris, I see my India. Of course, I have my tenderness, I have my soft corners, my heart breaks, my heart aches when I talk about and think about India. But at the same time, it's a privilege to have that distance and to have my novels, let's say it that way. My novels are not Indian, of course. They are all of them are about India. But they're not French either, even though they're written in French. They are Franco-Indian. They are all very mixed kind of thing. In French, we say métis. How to translate métis in English? Sorry? Mixed race, yes. I'm not quite fond of the word race. Let's try to find, we'll find out.
No, thank you for answering the question that I hadn't explicitly asked, but I meant to, about the way you use the French language. Yes, separated at birth.
Exactly.
Tell us a bit about the other two books
Okay.
after the Calcutta book.
Okay. Then after Calcutta, I wrote a novel in French. It's called Apatride. It's translated into German. It always are translated into different languages, and in English, it's getting translated now.
And winning several awards.
Oh, you too. The awards are good. Yeah, they're there to encourage us and all. So, the novel's name is Stateless. There are 3 women. One is like me, living in Paris, working there, but because everywhere, here I'm happy to tell you why and how I write my books in French, right? But most of the time, frankly, people don't believe me. Lots of people, not all of them, but lots of people, they don't believe me that I write in French, because for them it's not an usual choice. They think that, they expect that I should write in Bengali or in Hindi or mostly in English. So sometimes they'll ask me, who translates your books in French? That's the thing. If you ask me, I'll be looking for a bottle of wine and not for drinking. You know what the story is now. So that's the way to trigger me off. So I got fed up and I started writing. But you don't write and publish a book because you are fed up. You write because you have pleasure when you are writing it. So I started with that. I went somewhere else and I wrote about the relationships between French and Bengalis and the intricacies of the translation process, and how the Bengali language, Hindi also, we have aap, we have tu and tum in Bengali also, tumi, apni, tui. And when you say tui, a kid can say tui among them. And how the language is not only about a question of intimacy, affection, but also a social hierarchy. We are so, surprised when everywhere in France, everybody is like, "Pouvoir, apni." But in Bengal, you call your domestic, chakar, tu, you say tu, you used to say tu. New generation, I think you don't do that anymore. There is a social hierarchy, there is a condescending, there's a power system in the language. Language is politics. Language is very political. Language is nothing is apolitical. Language is very political. So I wanted to describe and find out all these, literary, poetical, and political aspects of Bengali and French, and how I write, what I write, and also at the end, what is to be a woman whose skin color is like the dark soil of Bengal, and who lives in Paris, who is divorced, who has refused to be mother, wife, who is free, as at least she tries to be free, and writes and lives, and what is to be there. And there is so many also, we have to say, racial problem, post-colonial racial problem in European countries also. So we have to all the time break those, post-colonial hierarchical systems. Subaltern parmi les subalternes, subaltern among the subalterns. That became very political, the last part. But all my novels are very poetical. As I told you, I cannot write a sentence in a normal way. I can't write a normal sentence.
Poetic and political. Yes. We'll open for questions now. Yes. Sorry.
Can I just? I forgot to tell you just one thing. This book is published. It's a non-fiction. It's 2022 November, and my next novel is coming up this 14 March. Gallimard also.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
And it's also again Baudelaire's poetical inspiration, and it's happening this time. I have chosen a French woman who is in her 30s. And coming, her name is Sophia. Now the book is just 1 month short to be published, so I can tell. Her name is Sophia. She's coming to India. Maybe I'm not giving the name, but that you can understand it's in India. And she's going to ashram for a spiritual quest, and she's also in quest of love and desire, sense, give the significance of her life. Lots of things are happening then. So, yeah.
The journey back.
In the other way, but it's seen through a foreign European.
So it's not back, yes. All right, we're ready for questions. Yes, the lady in front, and then over there and over there. So keep your questions short, please. We don't have too much.
I'll keep my answers short too. Thank you.
Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour.
C'est un immense honneur de vous parler. En fait,
merci.
Vous êtes une grande source d'inspiration pour tous les jeunes Indiens qui parlent le français et qui veulent aussi s'impliquer dans la littérature et écrire comme vous et être écrivain en français. Alors, merci beaucoup. C'est un immense honneur de vous avoir devant nous. Et je m'appelle Shreya, je suis professeure du français ici.
Ah.
Et j'ai fait mon master en France et je suis une lectrice avide de vos œuvres. J'ai lu presque toutes les œuvres, très très intéressant, immense plaisir. Alors, j'ai une question, je peux vous poser une question? Vous écrivez dans Les Assommons, les pauvres, connaître l'autre serait aussi périlleux de traverser les frontières, les mers et les océans. Alors, comment parler avec quelqu'un, interagir avec quelqu'un peut être plus dur que voyager nous-mêmes et traverser les pays et aller lointain? Est-ce que vous comprenez?
Oui, oui. Est-ce qu'on va traduire la question pour l'audience, pour le public? You can do that with me for... Excuse me? Can we translate the question for the public?
Yeah, we are also running short of time.
Thank you so much, Shreya. It means a world to me everything we have said.
Short.
Yes, I'll just translate. So ma'am writes that knowing the other, like someone else, is more difficult than going to a new country or passing through mountains and rivers. So I asked ma'am, like, how can it be possible that we are talking to someone and knowing someone is more difficult than going to a different country and experiencing their culture?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be giving
Should we
you...
take all the questions first?
Maybe that's a good
And
idea.
then-
Yeah,
and then
let's
we
do
can
that.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So over there, halfway down there on the left, someone there had put up their hand. Yes.
Hey, hi. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, how do you navigate having like I don't know if you do, but I write in English and my first language was Hindi. So I always have this puritanical streak as in, I should be writing in the language that I grew up in instead of writing in the language that I learned later. So how do you navigate that sort of imposter syndrome? Do you have any?
Okay. And one more question we can take. Yes, the gentleman here.
J'habite en France aussi, but I'm going to ask the question in English. The reaction or the experience of brown men and brown women in France.
I can't hear you quite clearly. Just speak up.
The experience of brown women and brown men in France is very different, and I'll relate a question based on experience that I had with some friends. They immigrated there. They found themselves better received than the men were. You write in your book about immigrants who are making up stories. Can you express their stories as men who have probably gone through a little bit different experience than a brown woman has as well?
Very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So that's your 3 questions.
Okay, let's answer. Shreya, thank you so much. I think we follow each other on social media, right? Maybe, no? On Insta, I think, yeah. Thank you so much for reading my books and have so many good words about them. If we have to be absolutely honest and down to earth, in a non-fictional, non-literary way, of course, it's much more difficult to travel, to climb mountains, to know a person. But when you are in a textual literary context, then you try to understand somebody in a different way, not just chatting and seeing the face. We always feel like there is a face behind this face, there's skin behind this skin. This look, the way somebody's looking at you, how many thoughts there are there behind their look, the way he's looking at you, she's looking at you. Maybe in those complicated, complex sense, for me, I wrote that it's much more difficult to know a person than to travel. But it's also kind of, I would say, poetical, licence poétique. Vous voyez? It's a poetical approach of saying things. It's not a down-to-earth, not a very honest kind of comment I made there, I must acknowledge, yeah.
Okay, imposter syndrome.
I don't have. We have 22 languages in India, and whenever you travel, you speak so many languages. You understand. If you speak Hindi, Assami, Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu, Hindi have so many different Hindis, like Hindi with Sanskrit influence, Hindi with Urdu influence. Urdu is such a beautiful language with Persian influences, and Assamese, Oriya. South, it's true, in South we don't really understand language coming from Dravid. So why I'm saying this, because When you come from a country where there are so many languages, we're habituated. Any Indian, normal Indian, they speak at least 3-4 languages. They understand English, Hindi, their mother tongue. I don't say mother tongue, I say native language, because mother language is also of your father's language, is lover's language. So yeah, politicals. So I don't have imposter syndrome, but I do not neglect your question at all, because some people will always try to impose you that imposter syndrome. There will be some questions always, and most of the time I would say they are gender biased, they are race, because of your race, racially biased, or sometimes it's just very stupid professional jealousy, you know. It's just the jealousy that you are there, you are mediatized, and they want the same thing maybe, but they didn't get it, and they are just trying to pick up something inventing to make you feel uncomfortable. But please don't feel uncomfortable with yourself, first of all. That can be my advice.
Okay, and now you have 20 seconds to answer the last question.
Okay, let's try. Thank you so much. There are male characters in my novels, and somebody said that how you could write male characters like that, insinuating something. I said, okay, when we write, we have all the genders, we have all the sex. This is the bang, right? Okay, no, this is the bang. No, wait. In fiction, I'm at the same time, I'm a woman, I'm a man at the same time. You have all the genders because you have to go inside your male character's head. So, but of course, it will be a real challenge if the whole novel would have been written through a male character's point of view. Absolutely. Maybe that's not your question at all.
Maybe you can take the
Afterwards,
conversation
yes.
on. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Shumona.
Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.